The coffee cup on the table was still warm when Evan Kent vanished from his small ranch on the outskirts of Lyons, Colorado, population 2,143. The winter of 2011 brought a blizzard that dumped more than 12 inches of snow across Boulder County, burying the entire St. Vrain Valley in cold white. At 4:18 p.m., the Kent's neighbor, Ellen Harper, glanced out her kitchen window and saw Evan, a 55-year-old retired construction engineer, pull on a dark green athletic jacket, wrap a scarf around his neck, and step off the porch. He told his wife he was going for a short run before dark, the familiar route that skirted the edge of the canyon. Ellen watched his figure disappear behind the pines, the reflective strip on his jacket the last splash of color in the thickening snow. What happened in the next 2 hours would haunt the town of Lyons for more than a decade. Before we dive deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. Winter 2011, the small town of Lyons, Colorado, lay buried under deep snow and biting winds that cut through the Rocky Mountains. The whole valley was silent, the streets nearly deserted, only a few yellow lights flickering at the gas station and the little coffee shop at the edge of town. On the northern outskirts, the Kent family ranch sat isolated beside the pine forest, surrounded by weathered wooden fences and snow-covered horse stalls. Evan Kent, 55, an early retired construction engineer, lived there with his wife Laura and their youngest daughter Claire. Their life was quiet and steady, following the rhythm of a mountain winter. Evan kept his weekend running habit, jogging the winding road toward St. Vrain Canyon, where the river had frozen solid and cold mist clouded the windshields of any parked cars. That afternoon the sky was heavy with clouds, wind whistled across the eaves, and fine snow had begun to fall. Evan put on thick running gear, zipped his collar high, pulled on gloves, and checked his running watch. Laura was out spreading hay for the horses, while Claire stood inside watching through the window as her father gave a quick wave before turning down the trail between the rows of pines. The wooden door closed with a soft thud in the thick cold air. Then the snow fell harder, the wind shifted, and the first footprints of the afternoon were quickly erased. Time passed. Darkness settled over the valley, the porch light came on, but the road remained empty. Laura stepped outside and called her husband's name. The wind swallowed the sound. She threw on a coat, walked the slippery dirt road, shining a flashlight toward the canyon as she went. No sign of Evan, no sound, no answer. Back at the house she tried his cell phone, but there was no signal. Inside the kitchen, Claire sat motionless, listening to the harsh ticking of the clock in the silence. Laura checked the garage, the barn, then opened the front door again to stare at the vast white expanse, now covered in fresh snow. Unease turned into clear dread. It was late, and the man who always came home on time was still missing. Laura went back inside, picked up the landline, and with shaking hands dialed the Boulder County Sheriff's emergency number. When the dispatcher's voice came through, she forced herself to stay calm and said her husband had gone for a run that afternoon and had not returned. At Boulder County Sheriff's Command Center, the call was logged as an emergency. The night shift officer forwarded all details to the Rapid Response Unit, classifying the case as missing person under severe weather conditions. An internal alert was immediately sent to the Mountain Search and Rescue Team and High Country Patrol units. In the coordination room, maps of the Lyons and St. Vrain Canyon area were spread across the table, sparse residences and forested mountain zones marked with red pins. The duty commander activated Level 1 search protocol, life-threatening situation due to extreme cold and prolonged loss of contact. 2 patrol units were dispatched to the Kent Ranch to gather more information directly from the family and check nearby trails. Overnight, temperatures plunged below zero and heavy snow slowed movement. When the first team arrived, Laura and Claire were still awake, every light in the house blazing. Officers asked detailed questions about clothing, running habits, and the exact routes Evan usually took. Laura described the canyon-side path where he normally turned around near the stone bridge. The information was recorded and relayed by radio to the SAR teams preparing to move out. On the all-terrain vehicles, rescuers checked headlamps, medical kits, GPS units, and communication ropes. A small advance team left first on snowmobiles, heading toward St. Vrain Canyon, an area considered high risk because of steep slopes and dense forest. At command, radar screens showed main roads and possible shelter points. Officers noted the area had almost no traffic and no residences for several miles. Search teams were assigned concentric circles, each responsible for sweeping a specific sector within a 3-mile radius of the main trail. A patrol helicopter was requested to launch from Boulder Municipal Airport as soon as weather allowed. Meanwhile, Laura was asked to remain at home and be ready to provide any additional information that might help. Recent photos, clothing description, personal items, and Evan's medical history. The lead officer jotted notes quickly, reassuring the family that the search would begin immediately, despite the harsh conditions. Just after midnight, the mountain search and rescue teams received the order to deploy, beginning the first phase along the trail Evan Kent ran every weekend. Snow lay deep and cold wind from St. Vrain Canyon whipped down the slopes, reducing visibility to a few yards. Team members wore thermal layers, headlamps, and reflective ropes, moving slowly over steep terrain, keeping enough distance so as not to block each other's view. At the temporary command post, the coordinating officer tracked each team's GPS dot on the digital map, ordering a complete sweep of the main trail within a 2-mile radius of Evan's usual area. Every 15 minutes teams reported coordinates and ground conditions, snow up to mid-calf, gusts to force 6, no human tracks. In dense forest sections they used probes to test thin snow layers and avoid natural sinkholes. Headlamps swept across pines casting long shadows, light flickering off the ice. When the wind paused, only the clink of lamps against helmets and the crackle of intermittent radio signals could be heard. The lead team stopped at the bend near the wooden bridge, where Evan usually rested, according to his wife, but fresh snow had covered any possible sign. They photographed the scene, logged road conditions, then continued northwest, where the trail narrowed and entered thicker forest. Another team fanned east, following the slope down toward the valley, searching the St. Vrain riverbank with flashlights. The river was completely frozen, only a few cracks running across, but nothing unusual. After 3 hours of searching, results were empty. No shoe prints, no fabric scraps, nothing dropped. Any movement the missing man might have made had been erased by snow. At command, the topographic map filled with red marks showing searched zones. Additional units from Jamestown were called in to extend the search another mile west, where the terrain featured deep rock crevices and side trails. They set up a temporary relay station at the ridge junction, raised a stronger communications antenna, and waited for the SR helicopter to lift off when weather permitted. Near dawn, snow thickened again, and many sections of trail were completely buried, forcing teams to mark their path with reflective stakes to avoid circling. One small team noticed a depression in the snow near the edge of a drop-off that resembled a footprint, but measurement showed it was only wind drift. They logged the location, photographed it, and took a snow sample for analysis to rule out human origin. All data was transmitted back to headquarters and saved in the temporary case file. At first light, teams returned to the rally point, inventoried equipment, and handed quick reports to the commander. The summary showed more than 3 miles of trail continuously searched under brutal conditions, with no significant finds. Map specialists updated the check zones and planned to expand into 2 additional side ridges for the next phase. Before ending the night shift, a preliminary report was sent to Boulder County Sheriff's Office, stating simply, "No evidence of movement, physical evidence, or biological activity within 3-mile radius of St. Vrain Canyon Trail." No one said anything more. They quietly packed headlamps and reflective rope in the thickening snow, the lights of the snowmobiles fading into the solid white. As daylight broke, the snow paused and visibility improved. SAR teams immediately redeployed in the grid planned overnight. Cold wind still blew hard from the northwest, but the air felt quieter, only the roar of snowmobile engines and position reports on the radio. The eastern team of 3 followed the mountain road down into St. Vrain Canyon, where the snow was thinner. Mid-morning, they spotted a red object standing out against the white expanse of ice and snow. As they approached, the shape became clear. Evan Kent's Ford F-150 pickup truck. The truck was parked crooked toward the right side of the mountain road, rear half still on the dirt shoulder, as if stopped in a hurry. The entire vehicle was covered in a thick layer of snow, showing it had been there all night. Doors were closed but unlocked. Headlights still on dim, glowing faintly through frost. No one was inside or around the truck. The SAR team leader immediately radioed command, requesting additional units and scene security. Within 20 minutes, nearby units arrived, set up a safety perimeter with reflective stakes and caution tape to preserve any possible tracks. They photographed the overall scene, logged the truck's GPS coordinates, nose pointed southwest, front wheels turned slightly left. One officer completed the scene log, confirming no skid marks or evidence of mechanical collision in the area. The vehicle was left in place, pending arrival of the Boulder County Sheriff's Forensic Unit to maintain evidence integrity. As the sun cleared the ridge, the forensic team reached St. Vrain Canyon, took custody from SRR, and began detailed examination. Light snow was still falling, wind along the slope blowing powdery ice, so documentation had to be fast but precise. Officers first placed stakes at the 4 corners of the scene, strung reflective tape in a 15-meter radius around the truck to preserve the snow surface. Inside that zone, every footstep was marked with numbered plastic flags to track personnel movement. A survey team used laser measuring to record position and orientation. Nose southwest, slightly left-right front tires sunk deeper, indicating softer ground or thin ice beneath. No long skid marks in front of the truck, only a few even depressions, likely from normal stopping rather than emergency braking. Rear tires left clear tread patterns, track width measured 1.67 meters, matching Ford F-Series specs. On the snow beside the right side, an officer noticed dark soil mixed with snow and collected a sample on site. The forensic supervisor noted, soil sample inconsistent with local geology, requires lab analysis. A 360-degree digital camera recorded the scene, focusing on small details, stake positions, wind direction, snow depth on the roof. Terrain analysts measured average snow depth around the vehicle at 24 cm, enough to completely hide any earlier footprints. During the sweep, no signs of struggle, no slide marks, no heavily compressed snow typical of a fall were found. The ground behind the truck was smooth, only a few small spots where wind had exposed gray soil beneath. Another team measured slope angle, 4.5 degrees northeast, consistent with intentional parking. In front of the truck, investigators probed the snow with metal rods, checking hardness and looking for buried objects, but found nothing. Every detail was documented per protocol: weather, light conditions, temperature, wind direction, and speed, humidity, road surface condition. The report stated clearly, no evidence of unusual mechanical movement or external physical impact to the vehicle. No evidence of outside interference. Once measurements were complete, the supervisor authorized collection of soil and snow samples from 4 directions: front, rear, both sides, sealed in separate evidence bags with identification codes. A technician recorded on-site temperature at 14 degrees Celsius, wind northwest at average 22 miles per hour. All data was saved electronically and backed up to a portable drive. Finally, the forensic team issued a preliminary conclusion, an on-scene report: no signs of struggle, no evidence of fall or dragging, vehicle parked stably, no emergency braking, no human activity recorded within 15-meter radius. Scene not yet determined criminal in nature. Recommend preserving status quo until full evidence analysis complete. The report was signed on site and handed to the Boulder County Sheriff for detailed vehicle examination at the technical facility. As the forensic team withdrew, fresh snow began falling heavily again, gradually covering the marker stakes and erasing every line drawn in the white, leaving only the bright caution tape ring standing out in the silent Colorado mountainside. Immediately after the truck scene was fully documented, the Boulder County Sheriff's Office began setting up a temporary forward command post to reorganize search operations in the St. Vrain Canyon area. The chosen location was roughly 2 miles from the truck, on a flat clearing near the trail, convenient for resupply and team movement. A mobile command vehicle was towed in, communications antenna raised, and the main operations tent erected. Inside, folding tables were arranged into coordination, map storage, and communications areas. A small generator was started, GPS tracking screens and radios ran continuously, linked to every team on the mountain. Officers were assigned 6-hour rotating shifts to keep operations 24/7. The lead investigator updated the search map using fresh forensic data and old U.S. Forest Service topographic maps. Trails, creeks, and slide zones were divided into numbered grid cells color-coded to prevent overlap. SAR teams were split into 4 groups of 6 to 8 members each. 2 on snowmobiles, 1 on foot with thermal imaging equipment, and 1 covering the river corridor. Local Lyons volunteer rescue members were activated for transport and food supply runs. County traffic units closed the mountain road to civilian vehicles and posted restriction signs. Meanwhile, the sheriff's media team established a dedicated line to Boulder County administration for continuous updates and to handle press inquiries. At noon, as the wind eased and the sky cleared briefly, the first coordination meeting was held inside the command tent. On the large wall map, the commander pointed out 3 priority zones along the St. Vrain riverbank, the slope toward Ward, and the low pass near Jamestown. Each zone received its own number, time window, and assigned team. Instructions were repeated clearly: look for any sign of victim movement, personal items, or terrain anomalies. All activity was logged by the hour, including weather and team status. Back in Lyons, the Kent family was updated on the expanded search. A family liaison officer was sent to the house to provide progress reports and collect any new details. Laura or Claire might recall side trails Evan had mentioned or favorite rest spots. Laura handed over an old area map her husband had marked years earlier while working for a local construction company. It was rushed to the command post for comparison with current data. Internal sheriff bulletins were issued every 3 hours, noting progress and operational changes. A small medical tent was erected on the edge of the command area, stocked with hypothermia treatment and portable heaters in case conditions worsened. Outside, sheriff pickups lined the trail, warning lights blinking against the gray snow. Logistics personnel refueled vehicles, delivered meals, and replaced batteries for distant teams. The field command post quickly became the central hub where every field report was compiled and forwarded to county headquarters. The final entry in the night shift log noted stable situation, clearly divided search zones, and readiness to expand further when weather allowed. Out on the slopes, snow still blanketed everything, SAR vehicle beacons casting faint light into the solid white of another Colorado night. The morning after, when the snowfall stopped and visibility improved, the expanded search plan was implemented synchronously from the coordination station at St. Vrain Canyon. SAR teams deployed under coordination orders, extending the search radius up to 10 miles, covering both the Ward Forest area and the St. Vrain River Valley. Forest trails were slippery, fallen trees blocked paths, forcing teams to split duties, clearing snow while advancing. 2 Boulder police helicopters were mobilized from the local airport, flying low and slow with thermal cameras mounted underneath, streaming live footage back to the command center. On the ground, small drones were launched from fixed points to scan narrow ravines and steep slopes inaccessible to humans. Each drone carried thermal sensors and infrared cameras, continuously transmitting data to the receiving station inside the coordination tent. In the Ward Forest sector, Team 3 moved northward, accompanied by 2 scent dogs trained to detect human scent and objects using clothing samples. The dogs followed old trails deep into the woods, occasionally pausing to sniff the snow, but showed no significant reaction. Team members logged every section swept, marking trees with reflective stakes to prevent overlap. Along the river valley, Team 2 inspected ice accumulation points where a person could become trapped after slipping. Metal detectors were used to check for buried objects beneath the snowpack, but all results were negative. The helicopters completed sweeps of the southern forest belt, returned for refueling, then resumed a second pass along the mountainside, reporting no silhouettes or heat signatures differing from the terrain background. Near midday, the fourth drone lost signal due to high winds, but prior data showed uniformly snow-covered ground with no signs of movement. At the command center, screens displayed GPS markers from each team, forming a ring around the 10-mile radius. Every direction had been checked. No significant gaps remained. The commander noted in the log, weather conditions difficult to sustain prolonged operations. Cold winds causing radio signal loss. All teams report no unusual findings. While the drone team prepared additional flights, ground units re-swept the narrow corridor between the trail and river, where the terrain drops sharply. They probed around large tree trunks and rock crevices, but found nothing. One officer tested thick river ice with a probe, reporting ice intact, no cracks or depressions. In the ward area, the two scent dogs paused before a dense thicket, sniffed around, but showed no reaction, confirming no human scent. Drone sensor data relayed to the center showed uniform imagery, ground fully blanketed in snow, no anomalous heat sources. As afternoon arrived, search teams returned to the rally point, submitting detailed reports of covered areas and GPS maps of actual movement. Every sector swept showed no fresh signs of the missing person or related belongings. At the command post, officers cross-checked maps to ensure no small ravines or obscured pockets were missed. After verification, the summary recorded, 10-mile expanded search radius completed. No traces, objects or suspicious biological signs detected. Weather stable but strong winds continue affecting aerial observation. The report was signed by the field commander and transmitted to Boulder County Sheriff's Office for archiving. As the sun set behind the mountains, rescue teams returned to the coordination station, briefly resting to warm equipment and log all areas covered that day. The search remained rigorously methodical, yet after hours working in deep snow, they had found no trace beyond the silent white expanse of the Colorado high country. At the same time, at Boulder headquarters, the investigation branch decided to pursue a new direction, a thorough examination of the victim's residence. A technical team and investigators were dispatched to the Kent family ranch to systematically search the house and barn area. Following standard protocol for unexplained disappearances, the house stood isolated from neighbors, nearly a mile off the main road, surrounded by old wooden fencing and knee-deep snow. When the technical team arrived, Laura Kent opened the door and let them in, her face weary but cooperative. Police first documented the overall structure, ground floor consisting of living room, kitchen, and a small office. Upstairs with 2 bedrooms and an unused attic. All entrances and exits were checked first. The front door was secure, lock undamaged, no signs of forced entry. The back door leading to the barn had a few dried mud prints on the wooden floor, photographed and marked. An officer measured distances between prints to determine direction. Results indicated mud tracked in from outside, possibly by family or animals during recent snowfall. Near the hallway entrance, the rug showed damp patches and fine sand, samples collected for analysis. In the living room, items were tidy, no overturned furniture, no signs of struggle. Evan's desk remained open with technical drawings and a ruler, nothing unusual. The master bedroom was checked. Next, bed, neatly made, closet closed. Technicians used ultraviolet light to scan floors, bed edges, and window frames. No biological stains or foreign objects. The closet was opened. Clothing was orderly, missing only a blue athletic outfit. Laura confirmed Evan wore the afternoon he disappeared. Police noted this detail in the record. Claire's room showed nothing out of place, books and school materials intact. In the kitchen, the team examined countertops, sink, refrigerator. Cookware remained in usual positions, no evidence of use after Evan left the house. An officer collected dust samples from counters and near windows as environmental controls. After finishing the main house, the team moved to the barn behind it. The barn door was half open, hinges creaking from ice. Inside, the 2 horses were healthy, stalls regularly cleaned. The floor had mud and hoof prints, but no drag marks or unusual scratches. Police took soil samples around the barn exit and hay samples for potential mineral comparison. On the saddle rack were a few fabric threads and old paracord, collected as precautionary evidence. The garage area, where Laura's vehicle was parked, was also swept, no missing tools or foreign objects. The entire property was photographed from multiple angles and 3D scanned externally for records. After nearly 3 hours, a complete search report was prepared on site and signed by Laura Kent. It stated, "No signs of struggle, no evidence of break-in or unusual activity in the house or barn areas. Dust, soil, and fabric fiber samples collected for storage and future comparative analysis." As the investigation team left the ranch, snow began falling heavily again. The wooden house quickly sank back into silence, marked only by deep police tire tracks on the driveway, leading to the snow-covered road back toward central Lyons. Following the ranch search, Boulder police shifted focus to gathering statements from anyone who might have seen Evan Kent or his vehicle during the late afternoon of the disappearance. Investigators started with the sparse residences along the road into St. Vrain Canyon, only a handful of ranches and cabins scattered along the route. They went door to door, questioning homeowners, gas station employees, and regular travelers on that road. Most residents confirmed heavy snow started early afternoon, visibility was poor, and no one recalled seeing a pedestrian. However, one woman living near the turnoff to Ward Forest said late afternoon she heard a truck engine echoing up the mountain road. But when she looked out, saw only faint yellow headlights through the snow, couldn't identify the driver. Another witness, the operator of a small gas station at the edge of town, said he had seen Evan stop for water and fuel many previous weekends, but not that day. The most significant statement came from a local food delivery driver. While driving down the mountain before dark, he saw a red Ford stopped on the right shoulder, headlights still on, but no one inside. He didn't stop, assuming it was broken down or the owner had walked away, but he was certain snow was already heavy and no other vehicles were on that stretch. Police recorded the exact time based on the driver's GPS-tracked delivery schedule. That timestamp aligned closely with the estimated departure time from home given by Laura, narrowing the critical window that afternoon. Additionally, 2 pedestrians on Lyons Main Street said they saw a man in a dark jacket walking near the stone bridge early afternoon. But snow obscured details and they weren't sure it was Evan Kent. Shown a photo, they said he looked similar but couldn't confirm. Police also interviewed workers at a repair shop roughly 2 miles from the trailhead. All had left before snow began. Statements were compiled into a detailed timeline: 13 o'clock, 14:30. Evan left home, 15 o'clock, 16 o'clock, snow thickened, truck engine heard, 17 o'clock, 17:30. Red Ford observed, parked on shoulder, unoccupied. No further witnesses after that window. Police cross-referenced each statement with Boulder weather station data for accuracy and re-examined the road segment from town to the vehicle location, photographing blind corners and steep sections, noting light conditions at dusk. From the accounts, a timeline map was built with 3 key markers: departure from home, the heard truck engine, and the abandoned vehicle sighting, all occurring within less than a 2-hour gap between the last possible sighting and the car being left behind. The preliminary investigation report concluded, witness confirms red vehicle stopped on roadside before dark, unoccupied, no crash sounds or distress signals reported. Timeline consistent with missing persons movements. Interview transcripts were signed and forwarded to the temporary command center for archiving and use in reconstructing the full timeline of the disappearance afternoon. After 3 straight days of searching in harsh winter conditions, every unit from the Boulder County Sheriff's Office and SAR teams recorded 0 results. Combined reports from ground teams, helicopters, and drones reached the same conclusion. No biological traces, no personal items, no movement signs outside the established area. The search area map was densely marked with sweep circles, leaving virtually no unchecked gaps within the 10-mile radius around the discovered red Ford F-150. On the morning of the fourth day, an evaluation meeting was held at the temporary coordination station. The incident commander reviewed the full activity log, timestamps, search grids, weather conditions, and witness information. The assessment determined the likelihood of the victim voluntarily leaving the area was extremely low. However, without evidence of criminal activity, the large-scale search had to be suspended to avoid wasting resources and risking rescuer safety. A scaled-down plan was drafted, retain only a 5-person SAR monitoring team to periodically check the scene when weather allowed. Support equipment, drones, thermal cameras, helicopters, was returned to Boulder for maintenance. All campaign GPS data was backed up and encrypted in the department's internal system. That same day, the incident commander and investigation representatives made a final visit to the vehicle site before long-term scene security. New reflective stakes, boundary tape, and warning signs were installed to prevent tampering. The forensics team collected additional samples, soil beneath tires and deeper snow at the road edge, for future mineral analysis comparison. Upon completion, they signed the report closing the initial search phase. The document was sent to the Boulder County Sheriff's main office with a recommendation to reclassify the case as missing person with suspicious circumstances due to the unexplained abandonment of the vehicle without signs of the driver leaving on foot. Simultaneously, a short press release was issued to local media stating, after 72 hours of unsuccessful searching, the Boulder County Sheriff's Office is scaling back the active operation, maintaining a small monitoring team at the scene, and continuing investigation into the disappearance of Mr. Evan Kent. Internally, officers agreed to stay in regular contact with the Kent family and receive any new public tips. At the Lyons Ranch that afternoon, Laura Kent received official notification. 2 liaison officers visited in person, explained the situation, provided the tip line number, and reviewed support procedures. Laura signed the acknowledgement, nodded, spoke little, and only asked whether they could still find her husband if the weather improved. She was told the investigation continues. Only the emergency rescue phase is paused. In the campaign log, the final page of Phase 1 recorded, no signs of life detected, no definitive criminal evidence. Scene under static monitoring. Case classified missing person with suspicious circumstances per Colorado state guidelines. By evening, the temporary command post dismantled most equipment and withdrew to Boulder. Only the overnight monitoring team remained on the mountain road with a small tent, solar-powered cameras, and scheduled radio check-ins. Snow began falling again, erasing fresh tire tracks, and the official search formally concluded after 72 intense hours without a single clue uncovered. After the search operation was temporarily suspended, Evan Kent's Ford F-150 was towed to the Boulder Police Department's technical examination yard for a detailed forensic inspection. The vehicle analysis was conducted inside a sealed warehouse with a stable maintained temperature to prevent melting snow from contaminating any evidence. The forensic team began with the exterior examination. The doors, mirrors, windshield, and handles showed no scratches or signs of forced entry. The paint surface was examined under ultraviolet light, revealing only minor scratches from road debris with no evidence of heavy impact. The windshield had a thin layer of snow that gradually melted, exposing a semicircular wipe mark likely made by a human hand previously. The left headlight was still in the on position when the vehicle was located. The bulb was removed for inspection and showed no filament burnout or cracks, indicating the electrical system was functioning normally at the time the vehicle was abandoned. After completing the exterior inspection, the team moved to the cabin interior. Doors were opened using protective gloves, and every action was video recorded. The driver's seat was adjusted approximately 10 centimeters farther back than the average position for someone around 1.80 m tall, consistent with Evan Kent's height. The seat belt was fully retracted, never extended, and showed no abrasion or broken strands. The steering wheel was clean, with no dirt or clear fingerprints due to snow and ice smudging. An ultraviolet light scan across the dashboard detected no blood or biological fluids. The ignition still had the key inserted, with no unusual scratches on the metal surface. The floor was vacuumed, and samples were collected from 4 locations: driver's seat area, passenger seat area, center floor and rear cargo area. Dust and soil samples were sealed separately and labeled B01 through B04. Beneath the rubber floor mats, technicians discovered a layer of fine dark brown mud distinctly different from the red clay soil around the Lyons ranch. Additional samples were taken with a stainless steel spatula and divided into 3 test tubes for mineralogical analysis. In the rear, the trunk was carefully opened and found to contain only a small tool bag and cargo straps, no foreign objects. The trunk floor was clean except for a few soil particles, matching the samples from under the driver's seat. The undercarriage was examined using a hydraulic lift, revealing thick, darker than normal mud accumulation around the rear wheels. Forensic technicians used a scalpel to scrape thin samples from dried soil, lodged between metal joints and near the fender wells. A total of 7 samples were collected. The technician noted in the report, soil adhered to the undercarriage has low moisture content, fine grain, grayish-brown color, likely does not match the stratigraphy in the vicinity of the victim's residence. The vehicle's GPS unit was removed and taken to the electronics analysis lab. Stored data showed the final trip lasted approximately 45 minutes, but due to an abrupt signal loss, only the route from the ranch to a midpoint in St. Vrain Canyon was recorded. Shutdown time was determined to be early evening, consistent with witness statements of when the truck was seen parked on the roadside. The storage drive also contained travel data from previous weeks, which was copied for comparison with routine patterns. The electronic dashboard and interior sensors showed no technical faults or collision indicators, confirming the vehicle was operating normally before it stopped. The driver's side window was lowered approximately 2 centimeters, possibly adjusted by the owner when stopping. Police also recovered a small pale blue fabric fiber caught on the interior door handle, which was removed with tweezers and preserved in an evidence bag. The spare tire well carpet underneath the rear seat was chemically tested for blood, result negative. No hair, skin, or other biological material was found throughout the entire cabin. All data and photographs were stored in the forensic case file system under vehicle code F15011EK. The preliminary examination report clearly stated no physical evidence of violence or accident detected. Soil samples collected from the undercarriage and interior differ from the geology of the ranch area, mineral composition analysis required to determine origin. The samples were packaged according to protocol and sent to the Mineral Analysis Laboratory at the Denver Technical Center for Silicate, Iron Oxide, and Organic Content Testing. Before concluding the process, the technical team decontaminated the vehicle for long-term storage and prepared a detailed report for the lead investigator. The final vehicle crime scene summary recorded the truck was mechanically sound, no damage, no signs of forced entry, no blood or biological evidence, only the presence of soil samples inconsistent with the victim's local terrain. The complete examination results were signed by the lead forensic examiner and transferred to the mineral lab for further in-depth analysis. After completing the vehicle examination, the Boulder Police Department's digital investigation team shifted focus to analyzing Evan Kent's personal data to establish his final activities and contacts before disappearance. Evan's mobile phone had been seized from his home in a powered-off state, with low battery and minor drop marks. The technical unit restored the device using specialized forensic software and extracted complete call logs, text messages, emails, location data, and synchronized cloud account information. The report showed the phone signal was lost at a time almost exactly matching when the vehicle GPS cut out, confirming the device was not manually shut down, but lost coverage or power. The call list for the 3 days prior to disappearance was meticulously reviewed, aside from routine work-related calls with his wife and a few former clients, there were 3 consecutive outgoing calls at midday on the day of the incident to the same number. That number was identified as belonging to Reed Callahan, Evan's close friend and former business partner on a fencing and materials storage construction project in Lyons. Message history revealed the 2 men had been in frequent contact in recent months, mostly discussing profit sharing from the project. The final text from Reed to Evan, sent early that afternoon, was short. "Meet me at the old trail, need to talk clearly before I send the paperwork." This message remained unread, and the timestamp coincided with the period Evan left home for his run. The technical team immediately flagged this as critical evidence and moved Reed Callahan's contact details to the requires interview category. Additionally, analysis of emails on Evan's personal computer showed he sent 2 routine work-related emails that morning. His inbox contained an email from Reed sent 2 days before the disappearance, subject line "Need to confirm equipment costs," with an attached unopened PDF. The file was decrypted and examined. It contained only an equipment inventory list, but the figures did not match Kent Construction's payment records. Investigators noted the discrepancy for cross-checking with the financial unit. Bank statements from Evan's local account were obtained under emergency warrant. They revealed 3 transfers totaling more than $20,000 in the month prior to disappearance to a personal account in Reed Callahan's name, with no transaction notes. That account subsequently forwarded funds to a small materials supply company in Longmont, registered to Reed Callahan. These financial transactions were treated as significant leads and attached to the master report. Digital analysts continued reviewing Evan's social media accounts and browser history. Among recently visited pages were an article about a warehouse expansion project managed by Reed Callahan and several searches regarding Colorado civil contract law. The investigation team concluded Evan may have been preparing for a business negotiation or dispute. Apart from Reed, no other unusual contacts appeared in call or message logs. All others were personal or minor work-related. Using the collected electronic data, technicians reconstructed the timeline of the day of the incident morning. Evan sent 2 emails early afternoon, received Reed's text early afternoon, left home. Shortly thereafter, phone lost signal. Analysts noted the strong correlation between the text message timestamp and the GPS travel data, viewing it as the only concrete link between the missing person and a specific individual. The internal report concluded no evidence of criminal digital activity on the victim's devices. However, there is clear evidence of direct recent contact and financial transactions between Mr. Evan Kent and Mr. Reed Callahan immediately prior to the disappearance. Recommend immediate interview of subject Reed Callahan, verification of transaction origins, and full review of communications. Copies of the electronic data and bank records were forwarded to the primary investigation team, together with a recommendation to cross-check Reed Callahan's whereabouts in Lyons on February 13, 2011. All information was encrypted and stored in the case file at high priority, marked in red "Interview Required, Last Known Contact." Immediately after electronic data revealed the last contact between Evan Kent and Reed Callahan, the investigation team summoned Reed to the Boulder Police Department headquarters for a formal statement. The interrogation was conducted in a standard interview room equipped with audio recording and surveillance cameras. Reed Callahan, 47 years old, a resident of Lyons, and owner of a small mechanical and building materials shop, was tall, with a silver goatee, and appeared calm when asked to cooperate. When questioned about his relationship with Evan Kent, Reed confirmed they had worked together for many years, collaborating on a materials storage yard project on the outskirts of town, but denied any conflicts. According to Reed, their relationship was strictly professional and friendly, with no serious disputes. When the investigator mentioned the text messages and calls prior to the disappearance, Reed said he didn't remember clearly, but they might have been about equipment invoices or outstanding expenses. He insisted he did not meet Evan on the day of the incident and stated that he had spent that afternoon at his shop, inspecting a delivery from Longmont. When asked for alibi evidence, Reed said he had been with 2 employees, and had delivery invoices and transaction receipts from around 2:45 p.m. that day. Police requested the employees' names and related documentation. Reed agreed, but said he needed time to obtain copies. However, when cross-referencing phone data, investigators discovered that Reed's device had left the shop area around 1:40 p.m. with location signals recorded north of Lyons, near the route leading to St. Vrain Canyon, the exact area where Evan often went running. When informed of this detail, Reed appeared flustered and explained that he had lent his phone to someone else to test the company's truck tracking software. The response was noted as unverifiable, as there was no evidence supporting the claim of handing the phone to another person. Investigators continued questioning him about the text message. "Meet me at the old trail," sent to Evan at noon. Reed insisted it was just a joke, explaining that the two of them used the phrase "old trail" to refer to their former construction office on the outskirts. When asked to describe the exact location of that office, Reed gave a vague answer, saying the building had been demolished and no longer existed. The report documented his demeanor in detail, avoiding direct eye contact and hesitating when discussing timelines. The investigator shifted questions to financial matters. When asked about 3 money transfers from Evan's account, Reed confirmed receiving the funds, but said they were profit shares from the project and had been verbally agreed upon earlier. However, he had no contract or written proof. Investigators demanded accounting records and expense invoices for verification. Reed promised to submit them within a few days. While the interview was ongoing, a technical officer continued cross-referencing Reed's and Evans' phone records and discovered that both devices had connected to the same mobile tower in the Ward area between 2:10 p.m. and 2:30 p.m., just minutes before Evans' Ford was last seen parked on the roadside. This finding was immediately relayed to the lead investigator. When questioned again about the time he left the shop, Reed firmly stuck to his original statement that he had remained there all afternoon and never left Lyons. The investigation team requested payroll records and employee schedules from the shop, but the documents Reed later provided did not specify exact hours. In the summary report, the investigator noted, "Statement contains contradictions between electronic data and verbal account, alibi unconfirmed." Reed was allowed to leave after the initial interview, but was instructed to remain available and not leave town without notification. He was informed that he was currently considered a person directly connected to Evan Kent's disappearance, not a suspect, but would continue to be monitored during the investigation. The internal report concluded with the note, "Reed Callahan, business associate, last known contact with the victim. Statement contradicts phone data. Listed in file as a person of interest requiring further verification." Following Reed Callahan's interview, the Boulder Police investigation team decided to expand the search area to Ward, where location data from both Evan Kent's and Reed's phones had overlapped. This was a vast mountainous forest region, located approximately 8 miles north of where the vehicle was found, with complex terrain featuring many old trails leading down to deep ravines. The next morning, a survey team consisting of 8 members from the Special Investigation Unit and 2 SR personnel was dispatched to re-examine the entire area. Based on mobile tower data, Evans' final signal was narrowed to a radius of more than 2 miles, centered around a small intersection connecting Ward Road and an abandoned trail from the 1990s. The teams created detailed topographic maps, divided the area into 500-meter grid squares for systematic searching, and deployed thermal scanners, metal detectors, and drone cameras to sweep the mountainsides, though thick snow and steep terrain caused unstable signals. Meanwhile, the Electronic Forensics Unit in Boulder conducted deeper analysis of Evans' phone location data, determining that the device's signal disappeared completely in the Ward area around 2:25 p.m., just minutes after the Ford signal was lost. Mapping data showed few cell towers in the region, limiting location accuracy to an error margin of nearly half a mile. Nevertheless, the lead investigator concluded This was the highest probability area for determining the victim's final movements. Over 3 consecutive days, search teams combed the entire forested hillside, focusing on ravines and stream beds where falls were likely. Rock faces were illuminated with floodlights during daylight to check for slide marks, but only old ice was found, with no new objects. Beneath the frozen streams, forensic teams used ice-coring tools to sample suspicious spots, checking underneath, but found nothing. All imagery and scanned locations were recorded and compared with old geological maps to detect terrain changes. Simultaneously, the financial investigation team continued cross-checking transactions between Evan and Reed, but no new documents emerged beyond the 3 previously identified transfers. Regarding Reed, a temporary movement monitoring order was issued, and his phone was tracked for any contact with the ward area, but no unusual activity was detected. Police also contacted local authorities in Ward about activity during the time of Evan's disappearance. The few sparse residents reported remembering no unfamiliar vehicles or people around mid-February that year. One lumberjack mentioned occasionally seeing a red pickup on a side road near the mill, but could not recall the license plate or confirm the exact date. All statements were recorded, but lacked sufficient corroboration. Based on the search results, the summary report stated, "Ward area comprehensively searched. No physical evidence, no biological traces, or signs of mechanical activity differing from natural conditions found." Concurrently, weather data from the National Weather Service was added to assess trace preservation probability. Analysis showed average snowfall during the week of Evan's disappearance exceeded 20 inches, enough to completely cover any surface traces within 12 hours. This explained the absence of footprints or items on the ground. At the end of the 3-day expanded operation, the operation commander submitted a report over 40 pages long, including GPS maps, drone imagery, search coordinates, and terrain measurements. The report concluded that no new physical evidence was discovered in Ward, but the area remained marked as the victim's final signal location for future monitoring when conditions allowed. All collected soil, ice, and dust samples from the area were sealed and sent to the Denver Mineralogy Lab for comparison with samples previously taken from beneath the Ford F-150. Before withdrawing, the technical team marked 7 locations with wooden stakes and electronic beacons to preserve coordinates for potential future re-examination. The final evaluation meeting was held at the Field Coordination Post, where the commanding officer announced the overall results. No physical evidence, final phone signals overlap in Ward search area completed, recommend retaining file pending soil and mineral analysis results. As the team departed, snow began falling again, covering vehicle tracks and temporary tents, leaving the Ward forest in complete silence beneath the vast white expanse where Evan Kent's phone signal had ended without any further trace. After weeks of expanded search and investigation yielding no clear results, the Boulder County Sheriff's Office officially held a summary meeting for the initial phase of the Evan Kent missing person case. All relevant units were present: Field Investigation Team, Forensics Unit, Electronic Technical Division, and Mountain Rescue representatives. On the conference table, thick case files were stacked in piles: vehicle examination reports, soil analysis, phone data, witness statements, maps of the Ward and St. Vrain Canyon areas. The lead investigator read the final summary. No body recovered, no direct physical evidence, no confirmed criminal indicators. Existing GPS data, phone signals, and material samples insufficient to establish criminal conduct. The conclusion was clearly recorded in the minutes and signed by the county prosecutor's office representative. Search teams had scanned over 70 square miles in harsh weather conditions without detecting signs of life or additional physical evidence. Soil samples from beneath the Ford F-150 and the Ward area were still under analysis, but preliminary reports indicated they could belong to common geological types found in many parts of Boulder County, insufficient for precise location determination. Evans and Reed's phone data was fully preserved, but the signal overlap in Ward could not confirm a meeting. Given the lack of direct evidence, the investigation team recommended temporarily closing the file and reclassifying it as a cold case per county protocol. The sheriff's office approved, issuing an internal notice stating Evan Kent missing person case. File number BK 2011-027, classified as unsolved, active investigation suspended pending new test results or evidence. All evidence, including the vehicle, soil samples, electronic devices, and digital data, was sealed and stored in the department's evidence vault with detailed itemized transfer records. The SR team withdrew from Ward in St. Vrain Canyon, dismantled the field coordination post, and removed all equipment. At the police department, the case file was moved to the Boulder County Cold Case Files cabinet alongside other unsolved disappearances from the past 2 decades. In the final note of the summary report, the responsible investigator wrote, "All current investigative avenues exhausted. Insufficient evidence for criminal prosecution. Recommend continued storage and periodic review with new technology or data." That same day, an official notice was sent to the Kent family, confirming that the case was temporarily concluded at the initial investigation stage, with the document outlining the family's right to request periodic updates if the file is reopened. Laura Kent received a copy of the transfer minutes at her home in Lyons, signing with a trembling hand. When the officer left, she stood silently watching snow fall in the yard, where faint traces of patrol vehicles that had parked there throughout that winter still remained. In Boulder County, file BK 2011-027 was refiled, stamped cold case, marking the end of the first investigative phase of Evan Kent's disappearance, without anyone able to provide an answer for what truly happened. More than 10 years after file BK 2011-027 was placed in the cold case category, the Boulder County Sheriff's Office continued periodic reviews of unsolved cases in preparation for the statewide cold case reinvestigation program launched in early 2022. The program, coordinated by the Colorado Department of Justice and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation (CBI), aimed to re-examine disappearances with intact evidence suitable for modern forensic testing. Among over 300 cases submitted from counties statewide, the Evan Kent case was flagged as fully eligible for reopening. The related vehicle remained in storage, soil, fabric, and electronic data samples were still sealed and unreanalyzed since 2011. File BK 2011-027 was removed from Boulder County's cold storage, seals intact, with the original lead investigator's signature on the evidence tape. An unsealing record was created, witnessed by CBI representatives, forensic technicians, and the newly assigned cold case detective, Detective Morgan Pierce. Pierce, 36 years old, was an investigator with the Unsolved Homicide Unit, experienced in digital data recovery and DNA evidence processing in old cases. Upon receipt, he immediately began reading the entire file, from the initial SAR reports to vehicle examinations, witness interviews, and Reed Callahan's statements. The pages had yellowed, but the information remained clear: no body, no direct evidence, no conclusion. Pierce requested the technical unit create a full digital copy of the file, while he began re-inspecting the original evidence. In storage, the Ford F-150 remained in a climate-controlled bay, covered and sealed to standard. Soil and fabric sample bags were removed. Barcodes checked against the 2011 inventory. No discrepancies. Backup digital data from the GPS and phones remained on the original drives. Pierce noted in the record, "File complete, preservation condition meets requirements, suitable for reanalysis." After full review, he prepared a reactivation report, submitting it to CBI and the Boulder County Sheriff for approval to reopen the investigation. In the first cold case team meeting, members agreed to prioritize the Kent case due to multiple elements exploitable with new technology: trace DNA testing, mineralogical geographic profiling, and modern algorithmic phone signal analysis. Pierce was appointed lead investigator, responsible for planning evidence re-evaluation and re-verifying involved persons. The initial goal was to determine whether criminal elements existed based on empirical evidence rather than inference. An internal memo stated, Case BK 2011-027 qualifies for reactivation under the Colorado Cold Case Program. All evidence and data preserved intact, ready for expanded forensic processing. Lead, Detective Morgan Pierce. In the following days, Pierce reorganized all documents, reconstructed the incident timeline, and systematized old connections. He requested the forensic archive photograph all evidence in high resolution, especially soil and fabric samples, for new spectrometer mineral comparison. He also submitted a formal request to the state DNA lab for next-generation biological scanning of all samples, including those previously negative. Internal Boulder police bulletins noted the Kent case was officially placed in Category A priority of the program, alongside 4 other northern Colorado disappearances. In his work log, Pierce wrote the first entry. 11 years later, the Kent file remains intact. Objective: establish truth through evidence, no assumptions, no bias. Reopening the file marked the beginning of a new investigative phase, as the disappearance once thought forgotten was once again placed on the desks of Colorado state investigators. After completing the procedures to reopen file BK 2011-027, Detective Morgan Pierce began a comprehensive review of all evidence seized in 2011 in preparation for forensic re-examination. Priority items in storage included a length of rope recovered from the truck bed, an old veterinary syringe found on the rear floor of the Ford F-150, soil samples adhered beneath the undercarriage, small blue fabric fibers stuck to the door handle, and the original GPS chip removed from the vehicle's navigation system. All items were sealed in individual evidence bags, labeled with Boulder County forensic codes, seals intact, and preservation certificates signed. Pierce was personally present at the evidence vault for the initial inventory, accompanying the forensic technician as each package was opened and its current condition photographed. The rope was approximately 1.8 meters long, 3-strand twist, beige faded to brown, with dark spots on several sections. In the original report, it was described as cargo tie-down rope from the truck bed. Pierce ordered fiber structure, twist pattern, and material analysis to determine origin, and cut 3 small segments for next-generation DNA testing, focusing on possible skin cell or sweat residue. The veterinary syringe was stored in a sealed plastic bag, needle tip broken, barrel showing dark brown staining, never previously DNA tested due to technological limitations at the time. He directed surface swabbing of the entire grip and barrel with specialized cotton swabs, noting the locations of suspicious stains. The pale blue fabric fibers, only a few millimeters in size, were separated into a new container and examined under a microscope, confirmed, still intact synthetic polyester structure, undegraded. Soil samples consisted of 3 sealed tubes from beneath the vehicle and 4 from the ward area, each individually labeled. Pierce verified every tag for accuracy, then ordered small portions sent to the Denver Mineralogy Center for Raman spectroscopy comparison of geological composition. Most critically, the GPS chip recovered from the Ford system was removed from its housing and connected to a modern reader to check memory status. The electronics engineer confirmed the chip was functional but required legacy decoding software to extract data. After preliminary inspection, all items were resealed in secure transport boxes with red forensic tape and transferred to the CBI Central Laboratory in Denver. Before shipment, Pierce compiled an identification list with specific testing objectives. 1 test for latent DNA on rope and syringe using next-generation nanostar technology, 2 determine rope fiber type and manufacturing origin through synthetic fiber analysis, 3 compare soil composition between undercarriage and ward samples for geological match, 4 match blue fabric fiber structure to any materials in evidence storage or from the victim's residence, 5 recover full original GPS data. Immediately after the evidence left Boulder, Pierce updated the internal report, stating, all samples remain intact and suitable for re-examination. Objective, detect foreign DNA or previously unidentified geological correlation. At CBI Denver, the Next Generation DNA Lab received the items and began decontamination protocols before processing. The rope was scanned with a green forensic laser, revealing faint fluorescence at 3 points, suspected human skin cells. The syringe was soaked in neutralizing solution, then scanned with fluorescence, detecting latent fingerprints and 2 areas suspicious for epithelial cells. Technicians isolated trace DNA, labeling samples A1 through A3. The fabric fibers were treated with UV light and spectral colorimetry, confirming weave structure consistent with synthetic sportswear fabric commonly manufactured between 2010 and 2012. Soil samples were analyzed via Raman spectroscopy and X-ray fluorescence. Preliminary results showed differences between farm area soil and undercarriage soil, while ward samples exhibited high similarity to the undercarriage samples in hematite and silicate ratios. Pierce received this via secure internal email and immediately added to the case file. The note requires verification of repeated geological source. Meanwhile, the GPS chip was successfully decoded by CBI technicians, extracting the complete final route before signal loss, saved in modern file format for travel path analysis. All preliminary results were compiled into a Phase 1 report sent to Boulder Police with a recommendation for deeper DNA sequencing on the rope and syringe. Upon receiving the report copy, Pierce added to his work log, "Old evidence retains forensic value after more than 10 years. Rope and syringe likely contain DNA. Soil confirms ward correlation. Next step, identify foreign DNA profiles and trace sample origins." At the end of the entry, he signed and forwarded the information to the forensic unit, marking completion of the old evidence review phase in the Kent case. After weeks of analysis in the CBI Denver laboratory, the next generation DNA testing results from the evidence items in the Evan Kent case were finalized and sent back to the Boulder Police Department. The report was over 60 pages long, with key findings highlighted under the notation, "Extranuclear positive sample." The rope recovered from the trunk of the vehicle, previously identified as cargo tie-down rope, revealed the presence of male DNA that did not match the victim. The recovered genetic sequence was clear, containing 22 qualifying STR and YSTR markers sufficient for entry into the National CODIS database. This DNA sample was designated KSTR11A, noted as unknown source, likely direct contact. Epithelial cell analysis on the rope indicated the presence of another male individual, not in the Kent family records, and not matching any samples from rescue personnel or technicians who handled the scene in 2011. The rope's surface showed traces of dried sweat and trace skin oils, indicating it had been handled with bare hands. The report concluded, no evidence of Evan Kent's DNA on the rope, extranuclear male DNA sample, possibly from another individual, using or moving the item. At the same time, the old veterinary syringe was scanned for DNA and fingerprints. Results revealed 2 distinct fingerprint impressions, one too smudged for analysis, the other clear and readable, which did not match Evan's prints. Genetic material on the syringe showed a mixed DNA profile, but the primary male contributor matched the genetic sequence from the rope, strengthening the hypothesis that both items may have been touched by the same person. For verification, the lab conducted an internal comparison with the state database. No matches were found in Colorado records at that time. The detailed syringe report further stated, no evidence of animal biological material or sedative drugs, partial positive fingerprint, DNA source identical to sample KSTR11. Additionally, technicians examined the blue fabric fibers recovered from the vehicle's door handle. Results showed degraded DNA insufficient for individual identification, but chemical analysis confirmed the fabric was synthetic, produced in a line of popular sport jackets manufactured between 2010 and 2012, different from the clothing Evan Kent was described wearing by his wife. All data was compiled with a reliability rating of 98.6%. Pierce received the report as soon as CBI transmitted the digital copy to Boulder and immediately ordered the forensic technical unit to perform a final cross-check to rule out cross-contamination. After confirming the entire decontamination process met standards, he ordered sample KS-TAR11A entered into the National CODIS database and the Colorado State System flagged as high-priority cross-check immediate. Entry was completed through CBI's secure internal system, accompanied by descriptive details, male common North American genetic profile, sourced from rope and syringe related to a 2011 missing person case. A new trace profile code was created, COBK 2011-11A. The fingerprint recovered from the syringe was also digitized and submitted to the AFIS system for a nationwide scan. Internal reports noted that both datasets, DNA and fingerprint, yielded no immediate matches after the initial run, but were placed into automated monitoring, set to alert if a future entry matched. Pierce immediately added all information to the Kent file, handwriting a note in the investigation log. 2 evidence items contain unidentified male DNA, high compatibility between rope and syringe, no victim DNA present, fingerprint does not match any individual in prior records. Samples entered into CODIS and AFIS, awaiting comparison response. The reports were printed in triplicate, 1 retained at Boulder County, 1 sent to CBI, and 1 forwarded to the Colorado Cold Case Unit. Pierce also sent a summary to the District Attorney's Office, affirming this was the first breakthrough proving the presence of another male at the scene involving Evan Kent's vehicle. After signing off and temporarily closing the file, he stood silently gazing through the technical room's glass window, where technicians continued examining fragments under fluorescent microscopes. 11 years after the case was shelved, items once thought meaningless had begun telling their own story, and the data just entered into CODIS now represented the most significant lead the investigation had ever had. After completing the process of entering the DNA and fingerprint samples into CODIS, Detective Morgan Pierce turned his attention to the GPS device recovered from the Ford F-150, the only item capable of revealing the vehicle's final movements. The GPS memory chip was transferred to the Boulder Police Department's Digital Forensics Lab to decode the raw 2011-era encrypted data. Engineers used specialized software combined with modern signal-reading hardware to recover all coordinate data. The process took 3 continuous days, with clusters of data extracted, cleaned, and resequenced chronologically. When the complete travel map was rendered, the screen displayed a chain of waypoints from the Kent Ranch to the St. Vrain Canyon route, matching prior reports. However, at the end of the sequence, an anomaly appeared. After the vehicle stopped at the location last seen by a witness, GPS data showed an additional 8 minutes of movement, covering approximately half a mile northward, deeper into the Ward Forest. This path was not a standard route and lacked a clear trail, only rough terrain between 2 hillsides. Pierce ordered the technical unit to reanalyze and rule out error or signal drift. Technicians confirmed GPS accuracy remained within a 5-meter margin with no interference, proving the vehicle had indeed continued moving after the presumed final stop. Notably, the average speed recorded during those 8 minutes was 9 miles per hour, steady and consistent, equivalent to slow driving on mountain roads, inconsistent with the theory of gravitational drift or pushing. Data synchronized from the vehicle's accelerometer chip showed 3 short throttle inputs and 1 light brake application, indicating active driver control. When cross-referenced with Evan Kent's cell phone location timeline, Pierce noted a significant discrepancy. Evan's phone signal dropped exactly when the vehicle began the additional half-mile movement. This supported the hypothesis that Evan may no longer have been inside the vehicle during that segment. Pierce immediately requested satellite imagery overlaid with the GPS track. The extended route became clear from the initial stop. The truck looped around a narrow slope, then headed north, ending in a dense forested depression. This location was near the cell tower, where Evan's phone signal was lost. He ordered detailed coordinate printouts, marking every minor stop for comparison with 2011 weather-adjusted terrain photos. NOAA satellite image analysis confirmed the area was an abandoned logging road last used in 2005. The technical report concluded GPS data shows that after the vehicle stopped at the St. Vrain Canyon location, it continued moving an additional half-mile north, over approximately 8 minutes at stable speed and controlled maneuvers. Cannot be attributed to downhill drift or natural causes. High probability of a second driver. Pierce read every page carefully, handwriting in the file. Strong possibility vehicle was moved after Evan exited. Need to identify driver. Skeleton. He contacted Ford's technical archives to determine if the model recorded driver's seat occupancy via pressure sensors, but the vehicle was too old for that feature. Still, the speed changes and steering inputs were sufficient to confirm intentional operation. The original GPS data was backed up to a dedicated drive, sealed, and a copy sent to CBI for independent verification. In his internal report to superiors, Pierce summarized, full GPS data recovery completed. Vehicle traveled an additional 0.5 miles after recorded stop. Speed and inputs indicate second driver. Final coordinates coincide with area of Evan Kent's cell signal loss. Request field verification of final GPS location. The memo was signed June 17, 2022, marking the first confirmation of probable second driver involvement in Evan Kent's disappearance. A few days after the GPS report was submitted, results arrived from the National CODIS database back to the Boulder Police Department. The forensic unit reported that sample KSTR11A, recovered from rope and syringe in the Evan Kent case, had produced a full match. The genetic sequence matched a stored profile belonging to Reed Callahan, born 1974, resident of Lyons, Colorado, an individual arrested for DUI in 2018, at which time a DNA sample was collected and entered into CODIS per state law. When the notification appeared, the words "full match, 22 STR loci," caused the technicians to fall silent for several seconds. The official CBI report confirmed 100% compatibility with zero error, eliminating any possibility of random coincidence. Pierce immediately requested cross-verification between the syringe and rope samples. Both contained Reed Callahan's exact genetic sequence. The DNA technician's notes stated, identical biological source, male present on 2 independent items, confirming single individual. Additionally, the fingerprint scanned through AFIS returned the same result, confirming the print on the syringe body matched Reed's 2018 DUI record. The parallel DNA and fingerprint confirmations reinforced each other, creating the first direct physical evidence linking him to the 2011 disappearance evidence. Pierce received the information that morning, immediately pulled Reed's old file, and reviewed prior statements and interrogation transcripts. Details began falling into place. Calls before Evan vanished, the text "meet at the old trail," overlapping cell pings in the ward area, and now Reed's DNA on items inside Evan's vehicle. That afternoon, Pierce briefed the county commander and the DA's representative. An emergency meeting was held with CBI Denver in attendance. The consolidated report stated, sample KSTR11A is a full match to Reed Callahan's DNA profile. Authenticity level 99.999%. Fingerprint from syringe also matches the same individual. Conclusion, physical evidence confirms Reed Callahan's presence at the scene involving Evan Kent's vehicle. After reviewing, the state prosecutor directed that Reed's status be upgraded immediately from person of interest to primary suspect. The decision was entered into Boulder County's internal system, accompanied by orders to pull Reed's 2011 financial property and travel records. Pierce drafted the next action memo, obtain a fresh confirmation sample from Reed to eliminate lab error, and schedule a new interview. Before signing, he added a handwritten note. Absolute DNA match between evidence and 2018 DUI profile confirms physical presence. Reed Callahan established as central suspect in Evan Kent disappearance. The documents, together with CBI results, were forwarded to the DA, marking a turning point after more than a decade of stagnation. From a directionless cold case, the investigation now had a clear identity tied to the only items that could only have been handled by someone directly involved with the victim's vehicle. Immediately after the DNA and fingerprint comparisons confirmed an absolute match with Reed Callahan's profile, Detective Morgan Pierce obtained a summons for him to appear at the Boulder Police Department for re-interview in the presence of the county prosecutor and a CBI forensic representative. The session took place in an interview room early the next morning, fully video and audio recorded. When informed that DNA on both the rope and syringe bore his biological markers, Reed visibly reacted with surprise, then immediately denied involvement, claiming there could be a testing error or contamination from long-term storage. Speaking in a hoarse voice and trying to remain calm, he insisted he had never seen those items and had no reason for his DNA to be on them. Pierce explained in detail the CBI's preservation, decontamination, and analysis protocols, affirming no possibility of cross-contamination. When asked to explain, Reed changed his story, saying he had once helped Evan work on his truck and might have touched tools in the trunk, then quickly added he didn't remember the exact time. When pressed for the most recent occasion, Reed became flustered, unable only to say maybe that summer. The response was noted as vague, unverifiable. When shown photographs of the rope and syringe, Reed studied them closely, then shook his head, insisting the items weren't his and could have been planted later. The prosecutor reminded him that both items were sealed at the scene and continuously stored since 2011 with an unbroken chain of custody. Reed offered no reply, only repeating, "If the DNA matches, there must be a mistake." Per procedure, the forensic team requested a fresh confirmation sample for comparison. Reed agreed, signed a voluntary consent form, and provided a buccal swab on the spot, witnessed by 2 investigators and his attorney. The sample was sealed, separately coded, and sent directly to CBI Denver for comparison with KS-11A. While awaiting results, Reed was allowed to leave, but was required to surrender his passport and agree not to leave Colorado. 3 days later, CBI returned official confirmation. The fresh sample matched all 22 esterase loci and the complete Y esterase sequence from the rope and syringe, eliminating any possibility of error or contamination. The report stated, "Sample taken directly from Reed Callahan is an exact match to the evidence DNA. Probability of random coincidence less than 1 in 10 trillion. Upon receiving the results, Pierce immediately scheduled a short follow-up interview, presented the confirmation document, and asked if Reed wished to amend his statement. Reed remained silent for a moment, then said he might have accidentally touched those things while helping Evan load or clean the truck, but maintained he had no involvement in the disappearance. The investigator reminded him that the rope and syringe were found unused in Evan's trunk after he vanished, and that Reed's DNA was present on both, while Evans was entirely absent. Reed did not respond, only staring down at the copy of the transcript. The interview concluded with Pierce's note, "Subject continues denial with inconsistent explanations. Confirmation testing verifies Reed Callahan's direct biological presence on key evidence. File status, primary suspect, continue expanded investigation." The transcript was signed and added to the Kent file the same day, solidifying the physical link between Reed and the disappearance scene. Following the confirmed full DNA match with the evidence samples, the Boulder Police Department and County District Attorney's Office immediately obtained search warrants for Reed Callahan's residence and business premises to gather additional supporting evidence. The warrants were approved by the county court within 24 hours, authorizing full searches of his home in Lyons and his mechanical shop in a small industrial area near Longmont. Early the next morning, the execution team's criminal investigation, forensics, and crime scene technicians assembled at the staging point and split into 2 groups. Pierce personally led the team to the residence. The property sat at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by an iron fence and dry maple trees. When the teams arrived, Reed was present, informed of his rights, and permitted to observe but not interfere. The forensic team began by video documenting the entire property, recording GPS coordinates, then systematically searched each area. In the first-floor office, officers located numerous financial records, old project files, and construction contracts. While reviewing them, an investigator discovered a contract between Kent Construction and Callahan Materials, bearing a signature labeled Evan Kent. But the handwriting was markedly different from Evan's known bank signature samples. The document was sealed as evidence. A desk drawer contained an unsealed envelope holding an unsent handwritten letter with no addressee, mentioning things that couldn't be explained if anyone went through the files. The letter was seized, photographed, and cataloged. In the garage behind the house, the team found an array of mechanical tools including hammers, pry bars, power saws, and welding equipment. All were examined for biological traces under UV light. On a rubber-handled iron hammer, the head showed uneven dark brown rust stains. An on-site swab tested with phenolphthalein reagent returned presumptive positive for old blood. The hammerhead was sealed, labeled, and sent directly for DNA testing. In a corner of the shop, a box of 2011 material invoices was located, several bearing Evan Kent's name with inconsistent signature styles. The entire box was seized for handwriting analysis. A technician scanning the garage wall area discovered a small dusty piece of blue fabric, visually consistent with fibers previously recovered from Evan's Ford door handle. The fragment was collected with tweezers and placed in a sterile bag. Inside a metal supply cabinet, the team located a coil of rope identical in color, thickness, and twist structure to the rope found in Evan's trunk. Pierce noted on the scene log, 3-strand rope, 8 mm diameter, identical type to evidence KS-TAR-11A. After more than 4 hours, the residence and shop were fully processed, yielding 23 seized items, including documents, tools, and physical samples. Everything was transported in a dedicated vehicle to the Boulder Forensics Lab. Preliminary testing of the hammerhead returned positive for human DNA matching victim Evan Kent's reference profile. The initial report stated, human DNA from rust stain on iron hammer matches victim standard via STR and YSTR analysis, error probability 0.000001%. Upon receiving the result, Pierce added, mechanical tool at Callahan shop bears victim DNA. Direct connection to disappearance confirmed. The remaining items, forged signature contracts, unsent letter and rope sample, were routed for specialist examination. Documents to the questioned documents unit, rope for physical comparison, which concluded identical fiber structure and manufacturing process. The complete search warrant return was finalized the same day, exceeding 40 pages, detailing every item, seizure time, responsible officer, and seal status. Pierce's summary report stated, search of Reed Callahan residence and shop, seized forged victim signature contracts, unsent handwritten letter, multiple mechanical tools, including iron hammer bearing DNA match to Evan Kent. Preliminary conclusion, physical evidence confirms presence of victim and suspect at same location. Recommend transfer of items for detailed analysis and preparation of comprehensive report to county prosecutor. By day's end, Reed signed acknowledgement of the sealed inventory without objection. His face pale, eyes fixed on the floor as technicians carried evidence from the shop, leaving behind a cold space filled with the smell of metal and the echoing clang of the closing iron door. After forensic examination of evidence at Reed Callahan's residence confirmed the presence of Evan Kent's DNA on the head of the sledgehammer, the Boulder County District Attorney's Office approved a plan to resurvey the Ward Forest crime scene using GPS data previously recovered from the location chip of the Ford F-150. The cold case investigative team, in coordination with the Colorado State Search and Rescue Unit, launched an expanded search operation based on the final coordinates in the vehicle's journey, an area of dense forest approximately half a mile north of the original stopping point. The search commenced on the morning of September 12, 2022, under dry weather conditions and good visibility. The entire zone was divided into 8 scan grids, each with a 200-meter radius, marked by GPS and digital topographic maps. Pierce personally directed operations on site, accompanied by forensic specialists, geologists, and SR personnel equipped with metal detectors, drone-mounted cameras, and ground-penetrating radar (GPR) units. After more than 2 hours sweeping the hillside area, an SR team reported an anomalous signal from a handheld thermal camera in the dense northwest section of the forest. A small block-shaped object reflected differently from the surrounding environment. Pierce immediately moved to the location, situated between two old pine trees and covered with decayed leaves and roots. As technicians cleared the surface soil, white-gray bone fragments emerged from the dried mud. The area was immediately sealed off, caution tape strung around the perimeter, and the scene preserved undisturbed. The forensic team began measuring, photographing, and numbering each exposed bone fragment. Approximately 1 meter away, while clearing more soil, a technician discovered a small round metal object covered in dirt and rust, a vintage steel wristwatch. When cleaned, the face was still legible, with the hands frozen at 2:37. Pierce recognized it as the mechanical watch Evan Kent's wife had described in the 2011 missing person report, a 1990s Omega Speedmaster with a black dial and silver metal bracelet. The watch was placed in a separate evidence bag. The entire area was rescanned with GPR, revealing a void at a depth of 40 centimeters. Upon careful excavation, the forensic team recovered nearly the complete human skeleton, including the skull, ribs, pelvis, and lower limbs. The skull exhibited a long fracture and shattering at the right temporal region, consistent with blunt force trauma. Additionally recovered were fragments of dark blue fabric matching the sports jacket Evan wore on the day he vanished, and a length of beige parachute cord draped across the arm bones, identical to the rope recovered from the truck. All items were sealed and coded Wardic 1 through EK8 and transported to the Boulder County Forensic Laboratory for examination. By the end of the day, the entire scene had been scanned and precisely coordinated on the county GIS map. In his preliminary report, Pierce wrote, "Human remains and personal effects discovered at coordinates matching the terminal GPS point of the Ford F-150 journey. Location 0.48 miles from main trail, steep terrain, dense forest cover. Bone samples were rush-shipped to the CBI laboratory in Denver for DNA analysis. Identification was performed by comparing STR sequences against Evan Kent's biological reference sample, retained from the 2011 missing person file. Results returned after 3 days. DNA recovered from skull and teeth matches the reference profile of Evan Kent, with a random match probability of less than 1 in 1 billion. The forensic report further concluded that the skull fracture was consistent with direct impact from a heavy blunt object, corresponding in size and mass to the sledgehammer seized at Reed Callahan's residence. Simultaneously, the recovered vintage watch underwent mechanical examination. Its serial number matched the purchase receipt Laura Kent had provided in the original 2011 file. Upon release of these findings, both the DA's office and CBI jointly confirmed that the remains discovered in Ward were those of Evan Kent. The consolidated report, exceeding 60 pages, summarized based on DNA results, mechanical trauma signatures, and personal effects. Victim Evan Kent died of blunt force cranial trauma. Body buried at the terminal GPS coordinate of the vehicle journey. Preliminary conclusion: intentional criminal act. Pierce signed the final scene log with the decisive note, "Victim's remains positively identified, 11-year-old data chain closed." The comprehensive forensic autopsy report on Evan Kent's remains was completed in late September 2022 and forwarded to the Boulder County DA and Sheriff's Office. The 80-plus page file included skeletal examination results, residual tissue analysis, DNA comparison, and physical testing of all items recovered from the Ward site. The initial section focused on cranial trauma, an 8.2 centimeters longitudinal fracture on the right side of the skull, shattering of the temporal bone extending to the occipital region, forming a depressed contour consistent with impact from a round-faced heavy object, measuring 3.8 centimeters in diameter. Expert conclusion confirmed instant lethal trauma, incompatible with accidental fall or collision. The required impact energy corresponded to a forceful blow from a metal object weighing approximately 1.5 2 kg, matching the dimensions and weight of the sledgehammer seized from Reed Callahan's workshop. The report noted absence of long bone or pelvic fractures typical of high falls, reinforcing the determination of direct assault. Minor scoring was present on several ribs, indicating post-mortem dragging. Soil analysis around the remains revealed uniform angled tool marks consistent with metal implement excavation, not natural processes. Residual dark blue fabric adhered to the jacket fragments was separated and sent to the CBI fiber lab. Results identified 2 fiber types. The first, dark blue synthetic polyester matching Evan Kent's known sports jacket. The second, silver gray cotton with dye composition and weave pattern, identical to the industrial uniforms used at Callahan Materials, the company owned by Reed Callahan. The report stated, silver gray cotton fibers were recovered from the victim's collar and right sleeve, structure and weave match uniforms, seized from Reed Callahan's facility. Findings indicate likely direct contact between victim and individual wearing similar uniform. Microscopic examination also detected industrial grease on the cotton fibers containing carbon and trace metal levels identical to the hydraulic lubricant used in Reed's pressing machines. Soil samples from the victim's shoes contained the same hematite and silicate profile as soil from underneath the Ford F-150 and the Ward burial site, proving transport within the same geographic zone. The beige parachute cord recovered with the remains was examined under electron microscope. Fibers showed abrasion, compression, and tension marks consistent with having been tightly tied or dragged. No clean ends indicated manual untying rather than cutting. Residual DNA on the cord matched sample KS-11, Reed Callahan's profile, again confirming physical contact between suspect and victim. Inside a jacket fragment, a small dried blood stain near the collar tested positive for Evan Kent's DNA via STR, confirming it was the victim's blood. No defensive wounds were present on hand or forearm bones, leading experts to conclude the fatal blow was delivered suddenly, without opportunity for reaction. In the final section, the CBI-led forensic pathologist wrote, based on injury characteristics, fiber transfer evidence, and associated items, cause of death is severe blunt cranial trauma from direct impact with a hard object, not accident. Biological evidence supports the presence of Reed Callahan at the time of injury. The report included a geometric comparison table between the skull depression and the sledgehammer head recovered from Reed's workshop. Contours matched within 1.2 mm tolerance. Pierce reviewed the findings in the forensic conference room, turning through X-rays and charts, then added to his investigation log, injuries compatible with Reed's sledgehammer strike. Fibers on victim's jacket match, suspect's work uniform. No remaining doubt as to intent. The report was immediately forwarded to the Boulder County DA with recommendation to upgrade the Kent file from missing person with criminal indicators to first-degree homicide. 11 years after the Ford was found abandoned on the mountain road, the final forensic conclusion confirmed Evan Kent did not vanish due to accident or disorientation. He was attacked and killed by a deliberate blow. Once the forensic report clearly established Evan Kent's cause of death and demonstrated direct physical involvement by Reed Callahan, the investigation shifted to a full review of financial records between the two men to establish probable motive. Pierce partnered with the Boulder Police Economic Crimes Unit and an independent forensic accounting firm authorized by the DA's office. They began by seizing all accounting records, contracts, invoices, and bank data for Kent Construction and Callahan Materials, covering 2009-2011. The period when the two jointly operated the Lyons Materials Storage Facility project. Documents seized from Reed's workshop were cross-referenced, revealing numerous invoices bearing forged signatures of Evan Kent used to legitimize cash outflows from the joint account. The interim audit report documented total diversion of more than $120,000 from project funds during the last 6 months of 2010. Most of these funds were moved through 3 smaller transfers to Reed Callahan's personal accounts, then routed onward to a separate supply company he owned in Longmont. Transfer trails were confirmed via bank statements and electronic payment records Evan had preserved. Timeline analysis showed that immediately after the third transfer, Evan sent an internal email requesting review of expenditure records, and an unsent draft in his mailbox warned of irregularities in disbursements requiring independent audit. This matched the content of the unsent handwritten letter later found at Reed's residence referencing files and numbers that cannot be explained. The financial investigation further uncovered that Reed had taken an $85,000 mortgage loan shortly before the project stalled without disclosing it to Evan, a breach of their partnership agreement. Reed could produce no documentation proving lawful reinvestment. The detailed report stated, "Clear evidence exists that Reed Callahan embezzled approximately $120,000 from the Kent construction Callahan Materials joint project. Funds were disguised through fraudulent contracts and victim signatures in an intentional scheme to misappropriate assets." Investigators concluded this financial conflict was the likely origin of escalating tension immediately preceding Evan's disappearance. Reed's final email to Evan, "Meet me at the old trail, we need to talk before anything gets sent," was interpreted as an appointment prompted by fear of exposure. Financial records also showed Reed withdrew $10,000 cash 2 days before the disappearance, with no subsequent traceable expenditure. In his original 2011 statement, Reed had denied any financial dispute. The new evidence completely refuted that claim. The forensic accounting team's final analysis concluded, economic motive is evident. Reed Callahan had direct incentive to prevent project audit and legal liability. Financial tension between the parties peaked in the final month before the disappearance. Pierce incorporated the findings into the case file, marking the section motive established, including the personal dimension that the men had been close friends for years. According to acquaintances, their relationship had visibly deteriorated after Evan demanded financial transparency and signaled intent to dissolve the partnership. These elements were compiled into an expanded investigative report submitted to the Boulder County DA, concluding, Reed Callahan possessed clear financial motive, direct physical and biological evidence linking him to the victim. Financial conflict and collapsed personal relationship form the foundation for criminal act. With motive now documented, the chain of forensic, financial, and circumstantial evidence was complete, providing a solid legal foundation to charge Reed Callahan with premeditated murder to conceal embezzlement. After the chain of forensic and financial evidence fully demonstrated Reed Callahan's direct involvement in Evan Kent's death, the Boulder County Sheriff's Office and District Attorney's Office implemented covert surveillance to gather additional behavioral data prior to seeking an arrest warrant. The Cold Case Task Force, coordinating with the Colorado State Criminal Surveillance Unit, placed Reed on the Greta watch list. For 2 consecutive weeks, rotating detective teams monitored all of Reed's movements using a covert GPS tracker installed on his personal pickup truck and local traffic camera feeds. Reports showed Reed continued normal daytime operation of his Longmont machine shop, but frequently left home late at night, driving erratic routes. On the night of October 4, 2022, surveillance cameras on County Road 80C captured Reed's vehicle departing Longmont at 2317, heading north through Lyons and entering the Ward Forest area. The exact location where Evan's remains had been recovered less than 1 month earlier. GPS data showed the vehicle stopped near the prior excavation site at 2352 and remained for approximately 40 minutes. Remote surveillance captured blurry footage of a male figure carrying a flashlight walking the burial zone, then returning to the truck with an object roughly 30 centimeters long, wrapped in a black nylon bag. Images were transmitted immediately to Pierce. Based on this evidence, the DA's office urgently applied for and obtained an arrest warrant charging Reed Callahan with first-degree murder, destruction of evidence, and tampering. The warrant was signed by a Colorado district judge in the early hours of October 5, 2022. Concurrently, the task force convened a rapid briefing at Boulder headquarters and executed the takedown plan. The arrest site selected was Reed's Longmont machine shop, where he arrived each morning to open. At 5:20 a.m., 4 unmarked police vehicles surrounded the industrial lot. 2 undercover officers approached the main gate. As Reed appeared holding keys to unlock, the arrest warrant was announced over loudspeaker. Reed Callahan, you are under arrest for first-degree murder in the death of Evan Kent. Reed froze, attempted to step back, but was immediately subdued and handcuffed. Forensic teams secured the shop while Reed was placed in a transport vehicle. He offered no resistance, only muttering that everything has been misunderstood. A rapid search of his truck bed revealed a black nylon bag containing rubber gloves, a new coil of nylon rope, and a folding shovel, all seized as additional evidence. The entire arrest was fully video recorded for legal record. The scene report stated, warrant executed 5:27 at Longmont facility. Subject Reed Callahan taken into custody without injury. Multiple items believed used for evidence destruction recovered. After processing, Reed was booked into Boulder County Jail, where Pierce read him his Miranda rights and detailed charges, including first-degree murder, concealment of a corpse, document forgery, and embezzlement. In the surveillance log, Pierce added, subject returned to crime scene at night, highly likely to destroy evidence or inspect burial site. Travel to ward constitutes additional proof of criminal knowledge and ongoing concealment intent. The arrest warrant was publicly announced that afternoon, marking the conclusion of the 11-plus-year investigation into Evan Kent's disappearance. Following Reed Callahan's arrest, the Cold Case Unit's digital forensics team, working with CBI Denver Cyber Division, seized all of his personal electronic devices for data analysis. During searches of the Longmont machine shop and Lyons residence, investigators recovered 2 desktop computers, 1 2015 Dell laptop, 3 portable hard drives, and a used smartphone. All devices were sealed, labeled, and transported in anti-static containers to the Boulder Digital Forensics Lab. Under Detective Morgan Pierce's supervision, technicians commenced data recovery. The first device processed was a 500 GB workshop desktop drive that had been reformatted multiple times, yet retained hidden sectors. After 2 days using specialized recovery software, the team located a hidden folder named Work_Archive_2011. Among old accounting files was a Word document titled Fence Project 2011.doc, created February 12, 2011, 1 day before Evan Kent vanished. The 4-page file detailed a planned meeting with Evan at Old Trail, former fence line near Ward Creek, to discuss unresolved cost shares. The final line read, "If he won't agree to resplit the investment, I'll have to handle it myself. Can't let everything collapse." Metadata confirmed no edits since 2011, old Word format, and authorship by R. Callahan. The technical report noted, document contains content suggesting intent to meet victim at location matching body recovery coordinates. Metadata verifies creator R. Callahan. Additionally, technicians recovered multiple deleted emails, including an unsent draft dated February 14, 2011. After the disappearance titled Keep Quiet, stating simply, "Say nothing about that day, just need time for things to cool." Recipient field was blank, but metadata linked it to Reed's work account. Another file on a portable drive listed material costs with a handwritten note, deduct Kent share, proving unauthorized financial adjustment. Concurrently, the cyber team decrypted Reed's laptop and located a fragmented journal-style document reading, "He doesn't understand I need to live too. No other choice. Just one swing." No date was present, but temporary file data placed composition around March 2011 during the active missing person investigation. All recovered files were copied, encrypted, and preserved as authenticated digital evidence with integrity certificates. Pierce reviewed each printed page, particularly Fence Project 2011.doc and the Keep Quiet draft, noting the described old trail near Ward Creek matched the exact GPS burial coordinates and was written the day before the murder. The CBI Denver Consolidated Digital Analysis concluded, recovered data from Reed Callahan's devices include files, drafts, and notes, proving planned meeting with victim at crime scene location and intent to resolve financial dispute. Draft email confirms subsequent concealment effort. Data authenticated via digital signatures and user metadata, no evidence of later alteration. Pierce added his final case note, digital evidence completes behavioral chain, preparation, execution, and cover-up. Certified copies were delivered to the Boulder County DA as critical digital exhibits for the prosecution of Reed Callahan. After completing the electronic data analysis, the cold case investigation team, in coordination with the Boulder County District Attorney's Office, proceeded to the synthesis and finalization phase of the Evan Kent case file. All physical, biological, digital, and financial evidence was systematically organized into a unified logical chain, forming a comprehensive reconstruction of the crime and Reed Callahan's subsequent cover-up actions. In the final report, Pierce presented the sequence of events beginning with the recovered GPS data from the Ford F-150's tracking chip, showing the vehicle traveled an additional half-mile after stopping, leading to the Ward Forest area, coordinates that exactly matched the location where the body was discovered. This was regarded as the starting point of the entire evidence chain, establishing the direction of movement of the second driver. The next link was the DNA sequence. An unknown male sample recovered from the rope and syringe in the vehicle, once entered into CODIS, produced a perfect match with Reed Callahan's biological profile. Fingerprints found on the syringe also matched his 2018 DUI record, completely eliminating any possibility of error. These items of evidence were cross-referenced with soil samples taken from underneath the truck and the Ward site, which showed identical mineral composition ratios of silicate and hematite, proving the vehicle had traveled to the exact burial location. The correlation between GPS, DNA, and geological evidence formed a continuous scientific chain of proof, confirming the acts of transportation, assault, and disposal of the body. The next section of the report connected the physical evidence to forensic data. The fracture pattern on the victim's skull corresponded perfectly with the head of an iron hammer seized from Reed's workshop, which also bore Evan Kent's DNA. Gray cotton fibers found on the victim's clothing matched the type used in uniforms at Callahan Materials, along with industrial grease stains of identical chemical composition. These elements proved direct contact between the two men at the time of the killing. Simultaneously, the financial investigation team concluded its work, confirming Reed had embezzled $120,000 from their joint project fund and forged Evan's signature on multiple contracts. Financial tension between the two culminated in Reed's final email to Evan, "Meet me at the old trail, we need to talk before I send the files." Combined with the recovered file, Fence Project 2011 doc from the hard drive, which detailed the planned meeting and contained the sentence, "I will have to handle it myself." The motive and premeditation for murder were clearly established. The reconstruction compiled by Pierce described the mechanism of the crime. On the afternoon of February 13, 2011, Reed arranged to meet Evan on the Ward Trail to discuss finances. When they confronted each other, an argument erupted. Reed used the iron hammer he had brought in his truck to deliver a fatal blow to Evan's head, killing him instantly. He then dragged the body deeper into the woods, tied the wrists with parachute cord, dug a shallow grave, buried the body temporarily, and covered it with soil and pine needles. To mislead investigators, he drove Evan's Ford back to the main road, parked on the shoulder, left the door unlocked, turned on the headlights, and walked south to his own previously parked vehicle. The entire process took less than an hour. When police later discovered the truck, no one suspected foul play because there were no signs of a struggle at the scene, and Reed remained silent for years. Later, the syringe and rope items he routinely kept in his shop inadvertently left DNA traces that became evidence against him. Pierce's report also analyzed the post-crime concealment methods. Reed returned to the scene multiple times to check whether the burial site had been discovered. He destroyed numerous electronic files, but could not erase all metadata traces, and he simultaneously fabricated contracts, handwritten letters to hide the financial motive. In the conclusion, the investigation team wrote, "The entire chain of physical, forensic, digital, and financial evidence is consistently linked without contradiction. Establishing intentional deprivation of life of victim Evan Kent in order to conceal embezzlement. The compiled dossier exceeded 200 pages and included complete maps, crime scene photographs, DNA charts, financial timelines, and computer data extractions. Pierce signed the final page in clear handwriting. Mechanism of crime: blunt force attack with iron hammer. Motive: financial dispute and fear of exposure. Concealment methods: vehicle relocation, body burial, document forgery, and data destruction. The Evan Kent case file was officially completed and transferred to the prosecution phase with a full and consistent body of evidence, closing 11 years of relentless investigation by Colorado law enforcement agencies. After the Evan Kent case file was finalized with a tightly linked chain of evidence from GPS, DNA, financial records, to electronic data, the Boulder County District Attorney's Office formally prepared the indictment against Reed Callahan in Colorado State Court. The 54-page indictment began with a summary of events from the 2011 disappearance to the 2022 discovery of remains, listing all forensic, financial, and digital evidence collected by the Boulder Police Department and CBI Denver. Pursuant to relevant sections of the Colorado Criminal Code, Chief Prosecutor Richard Halley signed the decision to charge Reed Callahan with 2 primary counts: first-degree murder and obstruction of a criminal investigation. The prosecution file also recommended consideration of 2 additional charges: forgery of commercial documents and embezzlement of partnership assets. The first section of the indictment stated clearly, defendant Reed Callahan, with a clear financial motive, intentionally killed Evan Kent to conceal the embezzlement of $120,000 from their joint project. Thereafter transported and buried the victim's body in the Ward Forest, and forged documents and destroyed electronic data to obstruct law enforcement. The supplemental evidence summary was divided into 5 groups: 1 biological evidence, Reed's DNA present on the rope, syringe, and burial cord with the body; 2 matching fingerprints on physical items; 3 forensic results proving skull trauma caused by the hammer from Reed's shop; 4 GPS data confirming the Ford traveled to the exact location where remains were found, and 5 financial and digital evidence establishing motive and preparation. At the press conference announcing the charges, Prosecutor Halley declared, "The Evan Kent case exemplifies the value of preserving evidence and applying new forensic technology to cold cases. Evidence collected after 11 years has given us a clear answer as to the perpetrator." On the same day the indictment was filed, Reed Callahan was transferred from Boulder County Jail to the County Justice Center for his initial arraignment. The preliminary hearing, presided over by Judge Mary Keating, lasted less than 15 minutes to read the charges and confirm detention status. Reed, wearing an orange jumpsuit, remained silent throughout the reading and answered only yes when asked if he understood the charges. The court appointed experienced state criminal defense attorney James Adler to represent him temporarily. In its filing, the prosecution requested no bail due to the severity of the charges and flight risk. The judge agreed and signed an order for detention without bond. Following the hearing, the prosecution submitted additional materials, including detailed forensic reports, crime scene photos, and Detective Pierce's statement, affirming that all evidence had been properly sealed and that analysis results were of absolute reliability. In the indictment's conclusion, Halley wrote, "From the continuous chain of technical, biological, geological, and financial data, it can be proven beyond any reasonable doubt that Reed Callahan intentionally murdered Evan Kent and subsequently engaged in multiple acts to conceal the crime and obstruct authorities." The formal indictment was accepted by the Colorado State Court on November 21, 2022, marking the beginning of criminal prosecution in the Evan Kent case after more than a decade forgotten in Boulder County's cold case archives. The trial of Reed Callahan opened on May 9, 2023, at the Boulder County Justice Center in Colorado, more than a year after the indictment was filed. The courtroom was packed with media, Lyons residents, and Evan Kent's family members. Judge Mary Keating presided, joined by a 12-member jury carefully selected over 2 weeks of voir dire. Chief Prosecutor Richard Halley represented the state, while defendant Reed Callahan was defended by attorney James Adler. In opening statements, the prosecution summarized, a case that had seemed lost for 11 years was solved through modern forensic technology, with physical, digital, and financial evidence all pointing to one conclusion. Reed Callahan murdered Evan Kent to hide embezzlement. During the early days of trial, CBI Denver forensic experts were called one after another. They explained the new generation DNA identification process and described in detail how they detected male genetic sequences on the rope, syringe, and burial cord, resulting in a perfect match with Reed's sample. Large screens displayed magnified STR charts and videos simulating the extraction process. One expert stated clearly, "There is no possibility of random coincidence. This DNA belongs to only one person, Reed Callahan." Next, digital forensics specialists presented the decoded GPS chip results, reconstructing the full route of the Ford F-150 and highlighting the additional half-mile into Ward Forest, exactly where the remains were found. They demonstrated through velocity and acceleration data that the truck could not have rolled on its own and required a driver, supporting the theory that Reed drove it after Evan was dead. The courtroom fell silent as a 3D map animation was shown, a red line extending from the Lyons Ranch to the Ward Forest, stopping precisely at the coordinates where the bones were recovered. An independent financial expert then testified, confirming Reed embezzled $120,000 from the joint project and forged Evan's signature on multiple contracts. The prosecution displayed bank statements, forged contracts, and an unsent letter found at Reed's home. Each time documents were projected, Reed only lowered his head and showed no reaction. In the digital evidence portion, the prosecution presented the recovered file, Fence Project 2011, doc from Reed's hard drive, describing the planned meeting with Evan on the old trail near Ward Creek, matching the crime scene perfectly. Prosecutor Halley's closing for the prosecution was resolute. This was not an accident, not a mistake, but a deliberate, premeditated act that was carried out and concealed for more than 10 years. The defense attempted to argue possible cross-contamination of evidence, and that the prosecution's assumptions rely on technical data without direct eyewitnesses, but this was immediately rebutted when the state introduced a second DNA sample taken directly from Reed in 2022 that matched the 2011 evidence perfectly. When called to testify, Reed invoked his right to remain silent, and through counsel, stated only that he did not admit to murder. The trial lasted a total of 14 days, 7 days for evidence presentation and expert testimony, 6 days of arguments, and 1 day of deliberation. On the morning of May 23, 2023, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict, Reed Callahan guilty of first-degree murder and obstruction of a criminal investigation. As the verdict was read, Reed sat motionless, gripping the table tightly, showing no emotion. Laura Kent, the victim's wife, wept, while Pierce, standing behind the prosecution bench, nodded quietly. During sentencing, Judge Keating stated, "The defendant took the life of a father, a husband, a friend, and left behind grief that lasted more than a decade. Justice has come late, but it has not been lost." After considering all factors, the court sentenced Reed Callahan to life imprisonment without possibility of parole, as required under Colorado law for premeditated first-degree murder. Additionally, he was ordered to repay the full embezzled amount plus investigation costs. The trial concluded at 3:42 p.m. that day, marking the end of the longest investigation in Boulder County history, where a disappearance once thought buried forever was finally brought to light and resolved with the maximum sentence the law allows. The official final report of the Colorado Cold Case Unit was released at the end of 2023. Closing case file BK 2011-027, the disappearance and murder of engineer Evan Kent. The 112-page document recorded the entire 12-year investigation, from Evan's reported missing person status in February 2011 to Reed Callahan's life sentence in May 2023. It listed 27 items of evidence re-examined using modern forensic technology, including rope, syringe, fabric fibers, soil samples, watch, iron hammer, and GPS chip. Of these, 14 items previously deemed of no value in the initial phase became decisive when new generation DNA technology allowed extraction of trace amounts from just a few remaining skin cells. The report emphasized the critical role of coordination between CBI Denver, Boulder Police Department, and the Digital Data Analysis Unit, as well as the effort to preserve evidence for over a decade. The evidence chain was described as exemplary in scientific linkage, from GPS establishing vehicle movement, DNA on items matching the suspect, soil samples matching the burial site geology, to digital data and financial records establishing motive. The investigative impact section stated, "The Kent case is a model for solving cold cases through DNA technology and digital data recovery, setting a new standard for interagency investigation at the state level." The report also recognized 41 individuals who participated across phases, with Detective Morgan Pierce receiving special commendation for reconstructing the evidence chain and coordinating departments. An appendix was devoted to the case's societal impact. The Lyons and Boulder County communities viewed it as proof of the importance of long-term evidence storage and investment in forensic technology. On the final page, the conclusion was printed in bold, "From a disappearance that once seemed hopeless, justice has been restored through perseverance and scientific progress." The Evan Kent case, a symbol of the power of time, data, and faith in truth. The story of the Evan Kent case is not only a 12-year journey to solve a crime, but also a reflection of many aspects of modern American life, where technology, justice, and determination intersect to restore truth. In today's American society, faith in the legal system is sometimes shaken by wrongful convictions or indefinitely delayed cases. Yet this story demonstrates the value of persistence and scientific advancement. Next-generation DNA technology, electronic data recovery techniques, and careful evidence preservation became the keys to reopening a case thought long forgotten. It was the smallest details, the traced DNA on the rope, the deleted fence project 2011 doc file, the geologically matching soil, that redefined how justice can be achieved, not through luck, but through trust in evidence and science. The lesson for life today is that every action, no matter how small, leaves a trace. In the digital age, honesty and transparency are not only moral choices, but the only real way to protect oneself. Additionally, the Evan Kent case serves as a reminder of the importance of investing in forensic systems and maintaining cold case programs, because justice, even when it arrives late, is always worth waiting for. For every American, the deepest lesson is this: never lose faith in the truth, because in a nation that respects the rule of law, truth may be buried, but it will never disappear. Thank you for following this dramatic case-solving journey in the Evan Kent investigation, a testament to the power of truth and forensic technology. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other cold case stories where justice always finds its way back to the light.